All right, well, I just start talking. And I welcome you, Irena Zagladov, the candidate for Makin, which is the northern seats or northern suburbs in Adelaide. Welcome to Based. Northeastern,
yes,
correct.
Right.
You can see why I'm in the upper house and you're the local candidate, having lived there for 25 years.
That's correct.
But welcome to Based. And once again, we always make this declaration. If you are here on Based, then you're based. So well done. Congratulations, you've ticked the box. And I can certainly say that for you, someone I've known for many years now, and someone who's a relatively recent addition to politics, but you're in it for the right reasons. I can put my hand on my heart and say that I've seen you get involved and start to get interested, and really it's kind of the perfect candidate origin story. There we go, made that up on the spot. There you go, I think it's actually true. So
I'll have to live up to that.
You are living up to it at the moment. You're running a great campaign in Makin. It's got a current sitting Labor member who's been there for a long time, and you are making really strong inroads into there because you're telling a very relatable story. But it doesn't start in 2025, it starts a bit earlier than that. It's a great story. You're born in Kiev,
yes,
in what is now Ukraine,
correct,
but was the Soviet Union at the time. I won't ask you to name the date because
showing my age. The Soviet Union collapsed a long time ago.
It's a fascinating story. You're born in the Soviet Union,
yes,
and tell me what it's like for a young person growing up in the Soviet Union, and how close are we to that in Australia?
Yes. Well, basically, I mean, being a child, you remember your childhood with fondness. So, and I wouldn't know any different. So, it was interesting, definitely very different from what we have here and from what most kids have experienced here. In their childhood, I lived in a high-rise building, as in an apartment, as would probably 95% of the population, because we were. Socialism is, for those who haven't experienced this, it is an ongoing housing crisis and an ongoing shortage of essentials. And this is why, but I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah.
I'm seeing glimpses of it now. But that was, I guess, it was interesting in many ways. I remember as a child wondering why so many countries are the enemies of our great country. We just want to basically live and exist in a peaceful manner. I want to attend school and just play with my friends. So that narrative was very strong, that we are surrounded by the enemy and who wants, basically, the outside world wants to destroy us. We need to be strong and we need to fight for peace, because otherwise that's the only way the peace could be preserved. But other than that, we just, it's just normal childhood experience. My mom worked, as did the majority of moms, because two reasons. A, you needed two salaries to survive. Only the wives of big party bosses could afford to be homemakers, and they were looked up to. And the other one, actually, there was a criminal code. That there was this particular offense, which was not contributing to society in a meaningful way. So everybody had to work. But that was just enough to basically get by. So it was basically, we were, I guess, the latchkey generation, except in our case, we were called like we wore keys around our necks, like on the piece of string. Well, I didn't. My mom thought it was demeaning, so it was in my pocket. She was willing to risk it. But and we had again, there were issues, as you do with that, with children growing up basically on the streets. I lived in a pretty rough neighborhood and I went to a rough school. But I think my mom was always conscious of the opportunities she had, because her own childhood was even rougher. So she made sure she read to me. She always tried to give me the best opportunities. And I had some wonderful teachers. There were opportunities available for children that would show some ability in certain area. Like, and you, for instance, if you are a gifted swimmer, you could go and develop it, or gifted chess player. But if you wanted to learn to swim and were not deemed somebody who could go and pursue Olympic dreams, you could not, even if you were willing to pay money for it. So it was very, very
So
pragmatic.
the state was looking for selecting favourites. Effectively.
And that was always with a view of basically, I think similar to many countries like China, to hopefully pursue an Olympic glory at some stage. So there would be very, very few, many average ones, but then some would probably go to the international competition.
Which, of course, is quite different to the ethos that we have here, which is everybody gets a fair go.
That's right.
But it's pretty stark for a little kid to sort of see that and live through that. And, I'm guessing here, but the stories we were told about the Soviet Union in the 80s was that there were bread lines, there were food shortages.
Kiev was a notoriously livable city.
Yeah.
It was looked up to as the most livable city in the Soviet Union. Of course, like Moscow and St. Petersburg would dispute the status of the most important cities, but they were overcrowded.
Yeah.
So Kiev was this compromise between a big city with theaters and sports arenas and very, very green. So no bread lines there. But very, very unexpectedly, some essentials would disappear. For instance, butter. I remember being in a butter line. Interestingly enough, I was sent there by my teacher, who knew I was a straight-A student, so I could afford to miss a lesson. I mean, I couldn't make this stuff up. So on her behalf, she needed that butter, so she said, "Look, can you
send
please?"
one of the kids.
Yeah, send one of the kids. So that's I was about 10 probably, and then this butter would reappear, and I guess the idea was that this economy would be centrally controlled and it would be allocated according to the need.
Yeah.
But in reality, things like butter or, for instance, sour cream, they need to be of a good quality, otherwise the shop assistants could try and mess with it and dilute it with milk. So there was the whole art to trying to find the basic essentials that were of an acceptable standard of quality, and I was tasked with it as a child. And when I would bring something like that was not up to my mom's standard, she would shake her head like I should know better. So that was the reality. Yeah.
It's we sort of find that hard to imagine in a country like this, but things I guess have deteriorated. We've now got housing crises in this country, and we're starting to see the creep of some of those socialist policies, I would say, come into Australia. You, however, decided at some point in the 90s, I think 1994, was it?
1996.
1996, you and your husband, Michael, decide, enough, we're leaving. Tell us about that.
Yes, I guess in our case, again, we were very young. So we went, and we were used to, as I said, growing up in an environment where we didn't expect much. So in our case, it was not so much that we had enough of the standard of living. It was more out of the desire to see the world and to experience something outside, because when we were growing up, it was there in Curtin. We knew that, if we're lucky, maybe one day we'll go to Poland or former Yugoslavia. If we're politically, that's the word, politically reliable. I cannot translate it. There was this test, so if you pass it, then you can be allowed to go somewhere in the Eastern Bloc. So just to be able to go out there and experience the opportunities that, and especially in Australia, seemed unreal from there.
So put that in perspective. That's 1989, the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Not 1989.
Sorry, 1989. And the the kind of the wave sweeps across Europe. The Iron Curtain falls, and I suppose the early 90s, 1990, the Soviet Union falls apart. I think a year later, 1991. So you're only talking 5 years since, it must have been quite strange, surreal, as is overused. And so you decide we can see the world now. So we can. There
are opportunities, and we want. But also we were very conscious that, worst come to worst, we can come back, which was different to people who decided to leave the Soviet Union during the Soviet Union. If they were let out, they needed to somehow come to terms with the fact that they are never going
coming
to
back in.
see their families.
Did you know
friends
anyone
again.
who'd done that, who had defected, as we would call it?
I know mostly maybe people not necessarily defected, but there was a repatriation program. If people had relatives in Israel, they could go and reside there.
Yeah.
So mostly
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
that route.
Yeah, it's sort of, we grew up hearing about this stuff, but never really saw it. And what was your impression of Australia when you came in '96? I mean, it was a very different country then.
Yes, it was first just abandoned, just a suburbia, this one-story little houses. It looked like, I mean, it's a toy country with like the city is not very big because we came straight to Adelaide. Happy, relaxed people. Happy, smiling, relaxed people.
And why Adelaide? What was the...
Why Adelaide? Actually, again, I mean, the decision making was not particularly sophisticated, I guess, because first we were thinking Sydney, but then when Michael was getting his visa in the embassy, I think at that moment they already were trying to attract migrants to the regions. So they said, look, why don't you consider Adelaide? And they gave him a booklet of what I think was a very, very bad printout of blossoming jacaranda trees. So they looked more like, we couldn't make it out. There were some very, very strange colors, but you could see that the trees were interesting, they were exotic. And just the name Adelaide, it sounded lovely. So we thought, we're going to try it out because, I mean, we didn't know anybody anywhere, so we thought we'd give it a go.
What was the difference? And so you moved into a suburb which is still currently in the city of Makin. You did not?
No. We lived in Findon.
In Findon?
Yes, for a few months. And then Michael got his first job in Whyalla. He is an IT support person for the uni campus there.
Yes.
So we moved there, and this is where I also went to uni there to supplement my degree from overseas, because by then I'd realized that I guess I needed local qualifications for many reasons to then try and somehow find employment. Then a couple of years in Whyalla. Then after we moved from Whyalla, we went back to Findon because that's what we knew. And then when we started looking for somewhere to settle, we started just again because we weren't tied to a certain place. We started going all over Adelaide, and we loved that area, and we settled there. Yeah,
and it's you were trained. You did a Bachelor of Economics with a marketing.
I did. So overseas, I did economics. It was five year studies. So I think it was like academically, it was somewhere between my bachelor and master's here. So they put it as honors degree in economics, and then here I did business, and I started studying towards my MBA, but then I didn't see any point in concluding it. But practically, I found it's very, very useful. It was a great idea that I found even practically in terms of just understanding how things work, because the system is very different here, the law and everything. And now I'm finding that all the studies, even though then I went more into marketing kind of things, now when I'm in local council, I find that being able to read the books, like all the accounting I've done is useful, law that I've done is useful. So it's actually great.
And you really, sort of assimilated into the community very quickly, I would say, and really became, as we hear so often with people that have come from a different country, became Aussie very quickly, and here we are a few years later, you're running for federal parliament. It wasn't that big leap though, because you had been involved in the community for quite a while with things that would come up. I think with the hospital, you were involved in some grassroots community action in there, but I think most impressively, you started to get involved in mainstream politics maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I think. And tell us about that. What was the catalyst, the driving force behind getting involved?
I guess, as you mentioned, I tend to get involved periodically here and there, just when things don't feel right. It's just, one of those people who I tend to speak up. I will send this email, I will make that phone call, and I will inquire. And sometimes I'll see it through to make sure that we get some results. But also, just a few years ago, we've always voted Liberal, and once you see that there is a need for the conservative side of politics to actually try and make a difference, it's really hard. I found it hard to disengage.
Well, I think one of the things that I've always said to people is, a lot of people like to yell at the TV, the old,
right.
old man yelling at cloud.
Yeah.
And of course I do that as well.
Well
So we all still do that. But you can do that, I think, if you are engaged with the political process, because you're doing everything you need to.
Right.
And I think we've heard this repeatedly over and over again. And I've said it to people: if you want to get, some results, get involved in the process. Now that doesn't necessarily mean joining a political party or running for parliament or becoming the prime minister. What it does mean, though, is getting involved with your local council as well, or your local professional body, because I think voices of mainstream Australia, common sense voices across the board, have been lost. I think many people like us have assumed that our institutions are going to be all right. So would it be safe to say, and of course that's not the case without us in being involved, is it safe to say that particularly with your background and having seen, communism, genuine communism, you started becoming concerned about the drift you were seeing in Australian politics and said, I've got to get involved?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. And again, I ran for my local council because I had seen the examples of councils around the country getting into all sorts of
political issues.
Crazy political, yes, that's right, adventures. And I just want my local council to be about roads, rates and rubbish. I mean, it's an outdated view, but it's what most residents share. And especially after having become aware about the hard work many councillors do, because lots of times you think that things work out themselves somehow, especially when nothing happens. You think that nothing happens just because, basically, not because somebody's trying hard to keep things stable, smooth and running. You just don't notice until they crumble.
Yeah.
So, and once you realize there is a need, and I also found, as I said, that lots of bits and pieces of education, including, paradoxically, my Marxist studies from like my first years of school and first years of university back in Ukraine, because since it was a 5-year course, it was interesting because I started when the Soviet Union nearly collapsed, but as a formality it still existed, so the curriculum was still the Soviet one, and then I saw it crumble, and when I finished, we had some lecturers coming over from Europe teaching us about the economy in a more modern way.
Does it give us some hope, though, when we all talk about what's happening to our education system with our kids at the moment and going through school, and a lot of this, I think there's a lot more ideology in teaching than there should be. Is there cause for hope, though, if someone like you can live through, Marxist studies at the University of Kiev and school, high school in the Ukraine, then kids, obviously that you're now running as a Liberal Party candidate in a different country, but there must be hope then that for those of us that worry about what this is doing to our kids, that it does wash off over kids, and kids will still, with the right home balance, presumably, will make up their own minds.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
I believe so. And also I believe there is a critical mass that has nearly been reached, because I have a couple of teenagers, and I know firsthand that their classmates are becoming to laugh at some of the ideology, because that's what young people do. Yeah. When it becomes absurd, they just stop taking it seriously.
Yeah, when people push their luck.
Yeah, that's right. That's easy to overdo. The ideology is easy to overdo.
Well, let's hope so, because it needs to happen.
So I'm an optimist.
Now, the seat of Makin, tell us about this seat for those who are listening, who hopefully many live there, so they are listening because they will have a great candidate here. But we're talking about the northeastern suburbs of Adelaide, so we're places like Golden Grove,
that's right.
Teachery Gully, where you are a councillor. I omitted that, but you also will get to that in a minute. And other seats around there. I mean, it is diverse. There are lots of different pockets, but generally speaking, there are families, hardworking people who I think basically just want to get on with their lives and let the government
Absolutely.
leave them alone.
Absolutely. I think the majority of them, and also, I think you've described it pretty well. So it's, and yes, it's a large part of the city of Gully, just north of Grand Junction Road, and there's bits of city of Salisbury, Salisbury Heights and Salisbury East, and a tiny bit of Port Adelaide Enfield, so all the way to Dry Creek. So it's a big area, and I guess especially the recurrent theme I keep hearing is people are concerned about their children's future, about their grandchildren's future, about their ability to ever move out, to afford a house, and just the pathway is not clear anymore.
No.
And this is what I'm hearing as well from, for instance, my daughter just graduated from the university, and she says, "Mom, many of my friends, I mean, they got their degrees, but they don't know what to do, especially if they want to ever be able to afford a house." So this is, and the parents, many in the shopping centers or when I'm door knocking, very often people will tell me, "I'm okay, but I'm worried about my children or grandchildren." It's a recurrent theme, I guess a big one.
We had it twice today.
Yeah.
In a different seat, in Spence, a very neighbouring seat, the same message.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Yes. And just day to day, I mean, cost of living, people are shocked at the prices going up all the time. And just today, I had a coffee catch up, and I had a guy who he works in the construction industry, and he said that sometimes he goes without hot water because that's the way he budgets. Yeah.
Which is the sort of thing that would have happened in the former Soviet Union.
That's
maybe not even.
Except, interestingly enough, power was very cheap. Water was free. I mean, they made up by keeping you poor all over, but nobody rationed water because water was abound, and power was very, very cheap. Yeah.
And so we mentioned there that you're a current councillor for the city of Tea Tree Gully. You stood in the 2022 local government elections there, and you did that once again because you are someone that puts your money where your mouth is and says, "I'm in." The other thing that you did, and I remember this vividly, was, and I know you're going to correct me and say it wasn't just Michael and I and the family, but you took the lead hand, the whip hand, as we would say, in the Voice, the No campaign in that seat, and you achieved with your team by running the campaign basically and doing a lot of the legwork yourself with flyers and running that area, achieved a 69% no vote, which tells you a lot about the seat, I think, as well.
Yep.
So, I mean, you were heavily involved in that. Tell us about it. Were people obviously very sceptical, as they should have been, about the Voice, but you were hearing it on the ground? Were you hearing similar messages from people at that stage that they weren't interested in whatever this was, that they were more interested in real issues, day-to-day issues like cost of living? I mean, during the Voice campaign. I mean, it must have been you saw it pretty close up. I mean, it was a very strong no vote.
No, I think during the Voice, I think the cost of living, I think it was just starting to bite. Yeah. So I think with the Voice, people got pretty involved over the weeks leading to the Voice, and I think the discoveries for many people were mainly that just the amount of like-minded people around. Because I remember working with some people who would just come on board as volunteers, not necessarily party members. It was very interesting. It was really grassroots, and people would be saying, "Oh, I might do it early in the morning and late at night because I don't know how people would react." And then they would discover that actually people are friendly. I remember it given to a school parent who basically was in a brown bag. It was during a basketball game because that's how it was. The leaflets, we felt that nobody wanted to be judged for handling the leaflets, which is bizarre. It was just information of our side. But in the beginning, the mood was, and I think that's the media influence. It makes you believe that most people probably would judge you. And then just by letterboxing and just by sometimes encountering people who say, "Oh yeah, I'll take this," and you can see you're not going to be judged.
No.
And at pre-poll, I remember I needed to go into a shopping center with in my T-shirt, and you wonder again what kind of reception you encounter, and people just nod and wink and nearly take a selfie with you.
Secret club.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it was like that because the media, large sections of the media, I have to say, and the corporate world and academia and everyone were championing the yes case, and yet the no case was won comprehensively around, school basketball games and footy club change rooms and front bars, which tells you a lot about the people out there. The seat that you're running for, I think, was at the last election, was it 8% Labor, I think, or something along those, or maybe a bit more?
At the moment, so last election was 10.8.
10.8, yeah. So my point I'm trying to make is getting very close to a sort of up towards a 70% no vote for the voice.
Yeah,
it tells us that the people out there are sensible, I would say, and I think are ready for a common sense message. And I think you're delivering that out in the community.
It shows us that they can resist the propaganda.
Yeah,
that's Labor propaganda. They can say no when Labor tells them to do something.
Yeah.
They can act differently.
And so tell me about the campaign. What's happening? How have you found the difference? I said the other day that I found what I thought being a candidate was like by comparison to what it actually was like was quite different. Are you experiencing that as well? It's a different life, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I guess the big one for me was deciding to run for council, because I realized I was putting myself into the spotlight on the spot and basically becoming a public figure, and it's very contrary to what I've always done, and even in my occupation, I'm in marketing, I'm not in sales, because for a reason, But so it was, I guess, less of a change than from never running for any office to decided to run for council. But in terms of being a candidate, I find it easier now for two reasons. One, because I've been doing it for nearly a year, or less being out there, so now it's becoming more. It's just the other day I was door knocking with a lovely lady who asked me. She said, "Do you still get nervous when you door knock?" I said, "Nope," because that's it, done. But also because now I don't have to explain to people what is it I'm running for, because they know it's going to be the election, whereas last year I started in July. So I said, "Look, I'm your local Liberal candidate." They said, "Is there an election?" I said, "No, but there's going to be a federal one." "When?" I said, "Well, jury's out. It might be October, might be December, might be next year." And they would just look at you. What are you about? So now at least everybody knows why I'm out there. But also, I guess I just got used to this, and there's great parts to this role, because the stories people tell you stay with you, and I feel I know the area. I mean, I've lived there for 25 years, but now I know it in a much more precise, different way. So that's
I can remember being not far from where we are now, a candidate in the Adelaide City Council elections, and it was a great experience. But the door knocking for the campaign, there were about 7,000 doors in that ward, and I can remember the feeling of being a candidate, knocking on doors and having good days and bad days. People, generally speaking, though, I think almost universally were very pleasant. I mean, I had expected when I walked out there that I'd be told to get lost and whatever, but it really hasn't. It really never was there, which shows, I think, how good Australians are. They treat people largely with respect. But I do remember one man. He's invited me, and he said, you're doing great work. I pity you're not going to get elected, though. But you're just good on you for doing it and keep trying. And it sucked the air out of me for about 2 days until I realised that he just completely made it up. He just assumed, because of the way I'd approached the door or something. I don't know. So, and then I ended up winning. So, whatever. It can really, you have those ebbs and flows, don't you, with a campaign?
No,
it's good days and bad days.
Sometimes people just would tell me. I remember in the beginning, somebody told me, "Oh, you should run for a different seat." I said, why would I run for a different seat? That's
I
where I
live here.
live.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so they're just like, yeah, I like you, I wish you well, but you should have picked a different
Oh,
seat.
yeah,
I'm
I
just
know.
like, no, sorry.
And generally people mean well. They're trying to be
Yeah, they
helpful,
do, they
but
do.
you know,
Absolutely,
you forget, I think, sometimes that, you know, you've spent so much time and energy and put your life into this campaign that, you know, it can be very deflating, but also quite exhilarating. So it's a real ride, I found, being a candidate.
Absolutely.
But it does give you a whole lot of fresh insights, and you do learn a lot of stuff. About your own home territory. You know, you really learn a lot of things. So I find it quite interesting. Now, what about we're into the last 2.5 weeks. We've got Easter coming up. So it's going to be a bit of a, you know, will you have any time with Michael and the kids, or is it just campaign?
I'll have to make it. I'll have to make it sometime.
Yeah.
Yes, Friday.
Yes, of course.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
I will go to church
You
on
will.
Friday, yes.
You will.
And hopefully sometime on Sunday, we'll have to make some time, but especially since we're going straight into it. But I'm trying to use these last few days wisely. Just today, I think was great. So I did a bus interchange, and I had a coffee catch up, and I dropped off some signs for some nice people willing to display them on their property.
That's great.
Because obviously they're bent on stubby poles.
Yep.
And had some chats, popped into the toucher trucks, spoke to local fireys, and so now we're speaking. So I think the day was well spent.
It's very well spent. I'm sorry to have hijacked it at the end, but it's been very, very interesting. I think yours is a pretty unique story in this campaign, and it resonates with me because my dad's generation, my dad came to this country and did sort of something very similar from a communist country.
How old was he?
He was quite young. He was about 10 or 11 when he came to Australia, but he came here armed with the pursuit of just becoming as Aussie as he could. So he ended up at Nord Oval eating pies and watching the footy, and he has never turned back now. He's the most Aussie guy I know now. So, but it is great to watch that sort of thing come, particularly when people have come from a different system. And I love the fact that you have said, I can see the writing on the wall here and I want to be part of the fix. So good on you for doing that. The people of Makin, if you live in Makin and you have a vote in this election, then you must vote for Irena. She is a ripping candidate. She is absolutely based, and thank you for coming in to Based on the Road, and we're looking forward to the next 2 weeks of the campaign. So good stuff. Yeah.
Thank you for having me, Alex.
That's great.
I feel I've made it already. I mean, I've been on Based. You know, what else can I do?
That's right. Yeah, there's no more to be done now. It's reached the pinnacle of, you know. That's great. Thanks, Irena. Thanks.
You. Authorised by Senator Alex Antic, Liberal Party of Australia, Adelaide.